Good morning. On behalf of Marlie's husband, Rob, and their children, Cameron, Devin, and Michael, and the extended families of both Marlies and Rob, thank you for coming to this celebration of Marlies' life. You are the people who cared for and carried Marlies and Rob and their family during her illness. And you are the people who have already and who will continue to care for Rob, Cameron, Devin, and Michael in the difficult process of grieving. Thank you for being here to show your love and support. I'm Pam Peters-Priest, a family friend, and I'll be leading this service celebrating Marlies' life. And I want to start by naming that experiencing and showing emotion during this service is okay. It's expected, even, and welcome. Marlies wasn't one to hide what she was thinking or feeling, and so there's no need for us to hide what we're feeling this morning. Crying is okay, laughing is okay. For those who are speaking or presenting in this service, if it's difficult and it takes you some time to get through what you want to say, we'll wait with you. This congregation is gathered in kindness to pay our respects to Marlies and to hold up you who were closest to her. And we will give you the time and the space you need to share what you wish to share. Let's pray together. Creator, holding the vastness of time and space, hold this time of remembrance and celebration. Hold up the grieving. There are many, many cares in this world that need our attention, but for this time now, hold this space for us to think of Marlies, her family, and friends. Hold those gathered here together in comfort. Hold those gathered here together with love. Amen. And now I invite Marlies' brother, Paul Dyck, to come forward to read the obituary.
Morning. And thank you all for coming today. Marlies Dyck passed away on Thursday, July 28th, at St. Boniface Hospital after a difficult and courageous battle with cancer. So Marlies will be dearly remembered by her husband, Rob, sons Cameron, Devin, and Michael, and her furry companion, Milo. She also left behind a lot of loved ones. Her extended family, the family of Eddie and Victor Dorbolo, and many dear friends from all aspects of her life, from Westgate, Falcon Lake, OT colleagues, and their incredibly tight community around Assiniboine Avenue. So she was born in Winnipeg on August 24th, 1964, to Gerhard and Anna Dyck. Being the only girl among three brothers, Carl, Alvin, and myself, really prepared her to be the strong woman that she was and to take on the role of matriarch in the Dorbolo household. Once again, outnumbered by even more energetic boys. Her caring and generous nature were reflected in her choice of career as an occupational therapist. She spent really over 30 years helping people, often children, overcome personal difficulties to live better lives. And her presence will always be felt at the family cottage at Falcon Lake that played a really big part in her life for over 40 years, since my parents purchased it in the 70s. You know, being at the lake really brought her a lot of peace and joy, and the time to knit numerous hats, gloves, socks, and other woolly creations. And she was really the undisputed queen of Block 3, Lot 43. Sitting in her window seat, she could simultaneously keep track of her stitching, carry on conversations, and direct the entire household to ensure that everything was done exactly the way she wanted it. And we can all honor our heart Marlies by remembering and carrying forward her formidable energy and spirit to bring more laughter and love to those around us. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you, Paul. I'll now invite forward some longtime colleagues and friends of Marlise's, Heather Martin Brown and Krista Buchanan, to share their memories.
Marlise loved being an OT. She was a champion for the children on her caseload. And if you think about the sheer number of lives she touched in her career, that number is absolutely staggering. She accepted families for who they were and recognized the potential in everyone long before acknowledging diversity was even talked about. Marlise wove creativeness into her work. She would find fun ways to engage some of the toughest kids and provide real-life, practical suggestions to their parents working with their children. She never needed fancy toys or therapy supplies. Marlise often made something or brought bits and pieces from home. She may have also borrowed a favorite toy or two from her own sons for her therapy bag. Shh, don't tell them. Marlise loved her family, shared lots of stories over the years. Of course, this means Rob, Cameron, Devin, Michael, her parents, her in-laws, so many dear and near to her heart and soul. But she also loved her Potsy family. She was really the matriarch of our group because she was there before all of us. We all have the first time I met Marlise story. It often involves some sort of lesson or her opinion on a topic. She delivered this with confidence and firmness that only she could do with that brilliant smile. Marlise was an incredible mentor in our program. She supervised dozens of students and new OTs, but she also supported everyone on our team and helped solve many a problem with a challenging case. She was always looking for ways to help us all improve, whether it be, and this included herself. This may have involved sharing a research article, or coming up with a creative way to address the wait list, or what we should be making for Thanksgiving dinner. She was a fountain of knowledge and was just waiting to impart her expertise to anyone who would listen. When our group became unionized, Marlise stepped forward to support our team and dragged me along to participate in the first collective agreement. The irony of this was not lost on Marlise, as she had had a little tangle with the union a few years earlier. She took on this task as she knew it would be important for our group. What she didn't realize was that it would be an incredible test of our patience, as we needed to spend long hours doing nothing, just sitting and waiting for things to happen. One day Marlisa had had enough of that, and she brought Christmas cards to write, spread them out all over the boardroom table, and completed that task. Even had me stuff the envelopes. But that task only took one day, and she was not going to just sit around. So she arrived the next day with some knitting and embarked on a bunch of projects. She felt that this multitasking was quite successful and asked if she should be knitting in all of her meetings. I told her that people might find that a little interesting and advised that that wasn't a good idea. She didn't listen and knitted at several more meetings along the way. Some of our most memorable moments with Marlies are around the lunch table at work. She was famous for her self-proclaimed inappropriate lunchtime conversation. Never rude, but always had an edge. She went through a period where the conversation revolved around an anatomically correct puppetry performance she attended and loved. There was also a time when a new SLP started with us, and it was rumored that her family was part of a sultana raisin empire in the Middle East. We were strongly advised not to bring this up. Curiosity got the best of Marlies, and within 3 minutes of sitting down to lunch, she could be heard saying, "So, tell us about this raisin fortune." Some of us tried to rein her in from time to time with a good Marlies, but it often didn't help. Regardless, these conversations always ended with side-splitting laughter and made our day. After a lunch hour with Marlies, our cheeks often hurt from laughing so much. Many of us tried new foods and restaurants because of Marlies. I remember being afraid to go to Foon Hai for the first time because I was afraid of the killer beef and slimy noodles. She would often organize a group of us to go to the restaurant that was a favorite of hers and Rob's, or one that they wanted to try. Because of her, so many of us experienced the little holes in the wall around the area, such as Dalat, Juliana's, and Shawarma Time. Just before we moved into Skye, her and I went to Spring Roll on Notre Dame. She loved that place and had great memories of going there with her dad when she was younger. She told me I had to get the deluxe wonton soup, which I did, and it's now my favorite in the city. I just had it yesterday and always think of her when I do. Marlies loved a good potluck too. When it was suggested that we sign up for what we should bring to make sure there was balance and variety, she replied, "That's not a real potluck. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? We all eat dessert for lunch?" This lack of organization and direction made all of her Type A SLP colleagues squirm, but she loved that too. Now, as much as Marlies always brought amazing-looking leftovers and loved to exchange recipes, she did have a culinary nemesis that she didn't hesitate to talk about: her hatred of raisins. Pity the new staff member that happened to have a raisin in her lunch, as she would get a mini lecture on how horrible the texture of those bug-like things were, and why would you even attempt to eat them? Now, maybe I'm making it sound like Marlies had strong opinions and was at times a little bossy. She was. But her heart of gold, her amazing laugh, and incredible desire to do the best she could for everyone she knew made her a much cherished colleague and, more importantly, a much loved friend. Marlies taught so much to so many. There are so many ways that she left an amazing footprint on all of our lives professionally and in a very personal way. She led with her heart always, and that is the best lesson of all.
I got to meet Marlies in September 1989 when I started employment as a physiotherapist at SMD. Marlies was already an OT veteran, having worked at the CNIB and then moving to a position at SMD about 10 months before I did. I was assigned to be her physiotherapy partner in the classroom programs at 825 Sherbrooke. To be honest, she scared me at first with her intensity, her nonstop energy, and her very, very loud voice. But we quickly started to complement each other's qualities to what ended up being a career-long relationship. From the start, Marlies was drawn to working in the community as an OT. In 1989, therapy services at SMD were mainly done in a classroom setting. But on Wednesdays, the classroom was closed to allow for all of us to go into the children's homes to show families what we should be doing and what they should be doing at home. Well, Marlies quickly saw that showing families was not the right approach and moved to asking families what they needed at home. This started her love of home visits. So when an opening came a couple of years later for an OT and a PT in their home program, Marlisa and I jumped at the chance. Marlies excelled in the role of consulting and collaborating, and over the years expanded her OT outreach role into daycares, foster homes, and nursery schools. There are 4 qualities of Marlies that stands out in my many years of working with her. Now, I know that her colleagues here today have many more stories of their own, but I'll just share a few of my favorite memories. So one of Marlies's best qualities was her sense of adventure. Okay, back in the early 90s, there was no working alone policy, there was no personal safety policy on home visits. There was no emails, there was no cell phones, there wasn't even voicemail. So we would have to call one of the program secretaries first thing in the morning and again at lunch just to see if there were any cancellations, which meant that most of the families we went to see actually didn't remember we were coming. I was the more cautious one when we'd go into some of these sketchy neighborhoods saying, you know, Marlies, maybe we shouldn't go in there. Whereas Marlies would say, nah, it'll be fine. So she would throw snowballs at windows for apartments that were locked. For apartments that had no door buzzer, she would lead me through these dark and narrow hallways to find the home. But for some visits, we went separately, alternating the weeks where we would see a family. In those situations, how we communicated was we would write notes in a binder that we would pass off to each other at 2:30 on a Friday afternoon, where it was really the only time the team would meet and talk about any kind of concerning issues. Well, that's how Marlies got into trouble. You see, we had a new referral for twins that were in a house on a busy intersection in Winnipeg that almost all of you would have driven past at one time. It's the kind of house that makes you wonder, what's really inside? Well, that new referral was in that house. Our first home visit was with Jackie Garrett, who was our social worker at the time, because Jackie thought this home was a little shady. But Marlies was so curious to actually go inside and see what the house that she had driven past for years, what was in it. Well, it turned out the young mom in the house was lovely and the twins were adorable. So we went ahead with the plan to start alternating weeks on Fridays at 1 o'clock. I went first. And I was a bit suspicious that first Friday by the number of adults that were coming in and out of that house during that 1-hour visit. I wrote my concerns in the binder that I passed to her right after that visit and talked to her about my concerns. But she didn't seem concerned. The following Friday, though, Marlies did not return for our 2:30 team meeting at the office. Our worries grew until she arrived at 3:30 looking flushed and breathless. Well, it turned out that while Marlies was in the middle of her OT session, the house was raided by the police vice squad. Once her identity was confirmed by the police, she was told to remain in the house to entertain those twin boys with the bag of toys that she completed while they completed their drug search. Needless to say, we never went into that home again. But there was one time that Marlisa's love of adventure hit a speed bump. It was when she fell in love with Rob. Well, Marlise was planning to leave for her trip of a lifetime to Australia, and she'd gotten approval from our manager for an extended leave of absence, which was really difficult to do at that time. Now, Marlise at the time, independent, no nonsense, non-attached Marlise, all of the sudden kept talking about her soccer coach a lot. Her soccer coach eventually had a name, Rob. Stories of Rob kept coming up at lunch. Rob's a great coach. Rob is so funny. Rob drives a motorcycle. He's so cute. Then, I think Rob likes me, but I can't date my coach. One former colleague wrote to me recently that she remembered that Marlise told her that she knew that Rob was the one when she went on a motorcycle ride with him, even before they started dating. She put her arms around him, and she knew it was the one. Once they did start dating, after soccer season, I learned, the lunch conversation changed to whether she should actually cancel her trip to Australia because she wasn't sure if he would still be there when she came back. But her sense of adventure kicked in, and she went, and Rob was still there when she came back. Rob, one of the things that she shared with me in your early years of dating that she really didn't approve of, your love of Captain Crunch, and that you bought it in crew size. The second quality that Krista already talked about is Marlisa's curiosity. Marlise was an intensely curious person, which made her the perfect OT. She needed to figure things out and used all her senses to do it. During a home visit, she would smell things. She'd examine things closely with her eyes. She would listen to how a toy would sound. So in case she was using it with a visually impaired child, she would touch everything. She loved to look at the toys that kids had in their homes, and she would touch every button to see how it worked. This would lead her into trouble. The best example is the time that Marlise did a short secondment to the interagency FASD program for an OT that went on a short leave. The office was in a building that was in the core area, and Marlise would often tell us how she would be the first person to be there early morning in the building. One morning, Marlise took the time to look at all the things that were in this OT's office. She opened the drawer, she looked at the papers, and then she noticed a red button in the office. Over the years, Marlise would share the story with her colleagues about her temptation to push that button to see what happened, which she did, and quickly learned that the button set off the panic alarm that again brought the police to her door. The third quality I want to share with you is her ability to build relationships with families. Marlise had a smile that could warm the grumpiest person, and she took the time to listen silently to families, which always amazed me because there were not many times that Marlise was quiet. Parents felt heard when they talked to her. Marlise could also make a crying child smile simply by taking their hand, opening their palm, putting her mouth to the palm, and making the loudest raspberry sound that could be possibly heard. I saw this many times over the 30 years I worked with her. It never grew old. Over the years, we had the pleasure of going into homes of various cultures and traditions, and Marlise would often connect with the families about the topic of food, which meant we often got fed during our home visits. Marlise would ask the families where they shopped, how they prepared a recipe, with Marlise often leaving a home visit with a new recipe, a new store to try, or better yet, takeout for her entire family. My fondest memory of this happened 8 years ago. We started with a lovely Philippine family who had just taken in a new foster child in the home that had many needs. At our first visit, it became apparent that the foster mom was not sure why we were coming into the house as she escorted us to her kitchen table that was filled with heaping plates of food. Only once we were done eating were we allowed to see the child. So we continued like this for a few months. until it was finally time to do school planning for this child. As this family was very hesitant to proceed about letting this little boy go to school, Marlies came up with the plan of having the family invite the school transition team to lunch at their home. Although the school transition team was also skeptical, they did agree, which led to a very successful start to this young boy's school journey. And yes, the school team left with leftovers. And finally, passion. Marlies was a passionate OT. She loved her profession, spent many hours researching equipment, suggestions for family, advocating for a child and family, connecting with colleagues, and always trying to learn. And she would often come in at 7 a.m. in the morning and spent that first hour before any of the rest of us got there reading and researching, so by the time the rest of us would saunter in, she was ready. She had planned our entire day. She had searched up all the problems that we had. As our clinical OT lead, she was always looking for ways to improve our program so that we could cut down on paperwork, make report writing less time-consuming, and take more children off the wait list. Marlies would often share with us that her family support is what allowed her the time and energy to be the best OT possible. Mr. and Mrs. Dyck, Marlies would talk endlessly about the weekends and vacations at Falcon Lake, where she would come back to work refreshed and energized. Mrs. Dyck, Marlies would come with leftovers for lunch of your amazing cooking, and she introduced us all to very many Mennonite dishes that you made. Mrs. Dorbolo, Marlies came to work knowing her boys were thriving in your care and that she got to go back to your place for an amazing Italian meal. And Rob, I overheard many 4 o'clock phone calls where she was telling you the instructions for pre-soccer dinners and making sure that each boy got to where they needed to go. She always let us know how much her family did behind the scenes. And Marlies, on behalf of all of your colleagues and friends here, thank you so much for allowing us to be just a small part of your incredible life.
Devin, Marlisa's son, will share a musical tribute with us now.
Sleep, staying up late at night. Too many thoughts going through my mind. Just looking for a chance to rewind. And I swear that next time won't be the same. And I swear that you aren't the one who is to blame. I have all of these fantasies that I wished we could have done. I just need you to know that I'll always be your son. So find. Time moves on, but I feel left behind. Your voice is still there to remind. And I swear we were there until the end. And I swear that you were my best friend. I have all of these fantasies that I wished we could have done. Now I just need you to know that I'll always be your son. Of green, as beautiful as can be. Don't you fret, we'll be okay. Let your worries wash away. I know you'd say to live our lives, we'll still miss you all the same. I just need you. I just need you. I just need you to know that I'll always be your son.
Devin, thank you. What a beautiful tribute to your mom. I'll now invite Carol, a long-time, very good friend of Marlisa's, to share her tribute. Marlies, a tribute to our friendship. Brevity is not my strength, so strap in, folks, we're going for a ride. Marlies knew what she was getting into when she asked me to speak at her service. As some of you know, I wasn't really asked, I was told. She knew I would deliver long, winding, tangential stories that essentially she and I have been polishing with retelling for 55 plus years. And Marlies would expect value for her money. But hey, you get what you pay for. Marlies, my lifelong friend, was a firecracker. When she was in a room, it lit up. Her wide grin sparkled, and her chuckles would quickly burst into gales of laughter. That laugh, that grin, and all those classic Marlies expressions. Marlies could speak without saying a word.
One knew exactly what she meant, as many of you can attest. My favorites were the "oh" and that grimace where she would look at you with slight confusion and you would know that you had said or done something completely idiotic. Occasionally, that burst of laughter came slightly before others saw the humor in a situation, or it lingered a little after others were done laughing. Marlies and I would often tell tales out of school, Sunday school to be exact. We had known each other since she was knee-high. She was knee-high to a grasshopper. I don't think I ever was. We were dedicated in this church and went to Sunday school together. She was the cutest little girl. In my first memory of Marlies, she was wearing a white and lime green dress. I marveled at her platinum blonde ponytails that stuck straight out and were fastened with matching baubles. I was smitten. We both had just brothers, so our parents would take turns taking us home for Sunday dinner after church, long before playdates were in fashion. Time spent with Marlies was always heaps of fun. We especially enjoyed changing in and out of the costumes that her mother had made. Our favorites were the prison outfits. We loved to dress the same. Much later, as teenagers in the 80s, we would get together before going out and dress in my clothes, occasionally with a piece of my mom's vintage wardrobe. My pedal pushers fit her perfectly, as long pants. Just a few short weeks ago, I asked, favorite memory? It was a memory of sheer fun and exuberance at Larchdale Crescent. She said, sliding in the rain. During a crashing rainstorm, backlit by sunshine and a rainbow, we repeatedly ran at full tilt and gleefully slid while standing on bare feet down the long, smooth driveway, just over and over again. It was the perfect afternoon. We both attended Westgate. Who can forget the early days in grade 7 or 8 when a teacher mispronounced Marlies? I'm wondering if that teacher is here. I don't think so. Okay, good. With an impish grin, she loudly corrected him. She was admonished for her attitude. When Marlies, unrepentant, did not relent, the teacher became incensed and shouted, "Dick, Dyke, duck," and he winged a piece of chalk at her. Well, she ducked. He missed. Pity the kid sitting behind her. He never saw it coming. In grade 10, we went on a Europe tour. There are countless stories about that. One in particular comes to mind. In Switzerland, Marlies bought an expensive watch. In order to buy that timepiece, she paid all her spending money for the whole trip. She had to go without snacks and souvenirs for the rest of the tour, but she had a memento that she treasured for years. After grad, we went our separate ways. Eventually, she became an occupational therapist, and I became a nurse. At intervals, we would send cassette tapes back and forth, regaling one another with stories of our adventures and escapades. All these years, Marlies thought she was taping over old conversations. Not so, I gleefully informed her decades later. I often sent a new cassette and kept the old ones for posterity, sentimentality, and of course, blackmail. In all the years, nearly 70 that I knew Marlies, we only argued once. But what happens at Garbanzo's stays at Garbanzo's. Eventually, when Tim and I bought a house, Marlies and friend Heidi became our first tenants. Her brother Alvin and his buddies were some of our last renters before we took over the whole house. Both of them recalled the delicious smells of food wafting through the door when they came home. They were willing guinea pigs for Tim's gourmet cooking and my reasonably good baking. As time would have it, Marlies and I were expecting our first babies in 1997. We were due 2 days apart. What fortuitous planning. Just kidding. We spent so much time together when our kids were little. I recall once when I was babysitting, or shall I say, the one time I was babysitting. I had Milan in tow, and by then Marlies had 3 boisterous boys. You guys know what's coming. She pointed to a list on the fridge, and before I had a chance to read it, she and Rob were off like a shot. It was not your typical list of emergency contacts. It was a list of things the boys were not allowed to do. Item 1, no digging holes in the backyard. Well, we weren't outside for 5 minutes when the shovels came out and excavation commenced. Uh-oh, I herded all 4 kids back into the house. Phew. Then I heard a click. Those little Hosenscheissers grinned at me through the patio door. After that, I'm sure "don't let the boys lock you out" was added to the list. Thank goodness Milan was there because she learned that afternoon how to unlock a door. Anyways, I'm quite certain that this is around the time we started to hang out at Carlos and Murphy's. Every few months we took turns driving, my Tucson or hers. The driver paid and poured. Our order was always exactly the same, so we didn't waste any time making decisions. Carlos nachos with a side of guacamole and a liter of sangria with an ounce of Cointreau on the side. Often we had the same server. Recently, we needed to train a few more. We reveled in stories from the past, caught up on every detail of our lives, our kids' lives, our families, our folks, our neighborhoods, our vacations. It was wonderful, and it was easy. We'd known one another for so long that we needn't give context to any tale. After we drove home, we'd sit in the car for another hour or 2 just to be sure we'd covered it all. I may have the gift of gab, but Marlies and I were equally matched. Carlos and Murphy's was where Marlies first told me in 2017 that she had been diagnosed with cancer. The air went out of us. We sat on the patio in silence, wondering where was this going to go. 2 weeks ago, when Marlies was admitted to the hospital, my daughter Milan called and asked if there was anything she could do to help me through. "Come to Carlos with me," I asked. And so, After what would be my last visit with Marlies, Milen and I sat at Carlos and ordered the usual. On the patio, as we were leaving, I spotted our former server. I mentioned that my friend was in palliative care. She expressed her sympathy and then rattled off our order verbatim, even though she hadn't worked there for 2 years. So our orbits tightened and loosened over the years. At Bethania Care Home where I work, I had the opportunity to care for Oma Friesen, Oma Dyck, Tante Sonia. Through those years, I got to see her parents, aunts, and uncles a lot while they visited the matriarchs. An interesting thing happens when you are connected to generations of the same family. One learns the family history, observes inherited traits, physical characteristics, and personality traits. In Marlies, I saw the gentle softness of her Oma Friesen. When you would feed her, even though she was very confused, she would caress you gently the whole time. She was so lovely. I saw the kindness and unwavering loyalty of her Tante Sophie, the astute thinking determination of Oma Dyck, the ingenuity of her dad, and the creativity of her mum. In Marlies, I saw the fun-loving brothers, her amazing life partner Rob, her deeply loved sons Cameron, Devin, Michael. In one way or another, all of them were shaped by Marlies, and she, in turn, was shaped by you. Those 3 spirited sons are a testament to the parenting of Marlies and Rob. They worked at having fun with a family that was always on the go. Marlies was an expert at organizing, planning, and micromanaging the menu, the household, the holidays. Marlies and Rob created a vibrant, supportive community for their family that is well represented here today. Long ago, Marlies and I planted her front flower bed with perennials that we thought might survive on the dry north corner. Sadly, this year, as Marlies grew ill, thistles and a variety of other weeds were overtaking the plants. She and I had so many plans to weed the garden, to go to the folk fest, resume cycling, crocheting, taking long walks, and sitting on the patio at Carlos. After she passed away, I weeded that garden. Rob and the boys were out at the lake as I was yanking out every single weed. I turned each clod of mud until it yielded into crumbling soil, ready to plant once again. That whole afternoon, as I worked relentlessly, fervently, trying to remove each unwelcome invader, many neighbors stopped by. Some asked how Marlies was, and were shocked at my sad news of her death. Others asked how I was doing. Donna came by with a pie and flowers for the boys. Even her husband, Rick, came by at a moment's notice to help with a spot of bother I had at the house. Cheryl and Bill from next door were enormously helpful that difficult day. Folks were literally coming out of the woodwork to support the family. All of us bonded over muffins in Marlies' kitchen. Sorry. At one point, during that sunny, breezy afternoon, Cheryl and I stood in the backyard watching the river flow by. We talked about the great elms and how many of those majestic trees were inexorably felled over the years, ravaged by a disease that just won't be stopped. She pointed out the recently planted trees, a pear tree, lindens with their heart-shaped leaves, and maple trees with their potentially massive shady canopy. This was a view Marlies enjoyed from her living room window and later from her bedroom window. We admired Bill's flowers, enormous white hydrangeas, red roses, and a swath of echinacea. Those coneflowers had brilliant magenta purple petals surrounding a domed center, a spiny bright orange seed head with a golden hue. The stems are so strong that a good shake can't bend them. The seed head is a matrix, miraculously complex. We mused about the quote by Jean Aucoux, "May the petals teach me the art of letting go." Just then, a hummingbird flitted by, busy gathering nectar as we talked. That bright little bird landed on a rose and rested, almost as if she were listening. I contemplated the art of letting go, petal by petal, and lamented that Marlies had lost all her petals at once. And yet, that intricate seed head remains, the essence of the flower that lives on. When I looked again, that little bird was gone. As with many plans, they shift and change. Marlies decided to forego the folk fest, opting for a more relaxing week at the family cottage. We went to the craft store to buy yarn for her crocheted hat project that she would complete that weekend. We mulled over the rainbow of colors, and she made her careful selection. I was amused how she ensured that she picked yarn that was on sale and used her 50% coupon for 3 balls at $1.99 a piece. She had endured so much chemo and then radiation up to that point and welcomed getting back to a more normal rhythm. After an early return home from Falcon Lake, everything shifted dramatically. It seemed as if she were climbing a mountain of shale. The effort of speaking became enormous and left her breathless. She was on continuous oxygen. I brought her a top-of-the-line little wheelchair that Maureen happened to have stored in her basement. "For when you need it," I said. "I'll hate you for a day," she said. We smiled. I saw Marlies the day before she passed away in a lovely room overlooking the river at St. B. Family filled the room. It was so perfect. I marvel at how warmly I was included in the bedside vigil and how compassionately I was consoled by her bereft and grieving sons and Rob at the apex of their sorrow the next day. That time was fleetingly and mercifully short, and yet it showed so much about Marlies and her family. Her love for family was paramount, and they surrounded her and embraced her as she departed this world. It was clear to me that she could hear and understand that day I last saw her and helped care for her. As I gave her a hug and a kiss on the forehead, as she lay sleeping, I repeated a German blessing we had heard countless times while growing up. Gott segne dich und behüte dich. Der Herr lasse sein Angesicht leuchten über dich und sei dir gnädig. Der Herr hebe sein Angesicht über dich und gebe dir Frieden. As I spoke, Marlies opened her eyes, and she looked at me with laser focus. We were face to face, eyes locked, and she smiled and nodded. I realize now that Marlies was not only absorbing this blessing, but also reflecting the blessing back to me and the peaceful room filled with family filled with love. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face to you and give you peace.
Thank you, Carol. What a long and wonderful friendship you shared. And now I'll invite Laura Lowen to come for a musical tribute. Laura will be playing an arabesque by Claude Debussy, and she selected this music because it makes her think of sparkling water, and so also of the family cottage at Falcon Lake, which was so special to Marlies. Thank you, Laura. Alvin, Marlisa's brother, will share his tribute now.
I put this picture up just to show you that Marlies and I both used to be cute. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But before I begin, I look around here and I see family and I see friends and I see colleagues and this incredible community that we've sort of been lucky to be a part of. And what I wanted to say is that people have all contacted us. Most of you have come up to contact us and say, what can we do to help? How can we help? This is what we do to help. This is how we help each other. We stand up for each other, we support each other, and we're there for each other. And I just wanted you to know that all of us have felt that love, and we thank you for it. So I'm her little brother. Marlies and I were the last two in the sequence of four. My two older brothers, Carl and Paul, you know, they're kind and they're considerate and they're gentle and they're a little on the quiet side. Marlies and I, not so much. So you had the two golden boys and then you had the two Tasmanian devils. That's how I see it. I've been an elementary teacher for over 20 years now, and I found that poetry is something that really connects for kids and for a lot of people. So poetry can say a lot using very few words, and that's something that Marlies and I would never do. The first poem that I wanted to start with was kind of when the news dropped for us. I want to start with a haiku poem, and a haiku is very simple. It's 3 lines. It doesn't rhyme. The first line is 5 syllables. The second line is 7 syllables, and the third line is 5 syllables again. What? You're leaving us? So much left for us to do, my little sister. In keeping with the poetry theme, I was trying to think about our relationship for over 50 years, and I'm thinking, what kind of a simile could I use to describe our relationship? And for those of you who are like me and didn't pay attention in English class, a simile is when you say something is like something else. So I started to try to think of similes that would come up with what our relationship's been like. 2 peas in a pod? Absolutely not. That's way too much order and harmony for Marlies and I. Hand in a glove? Too perfect. No way. Yin and yang, opposing forces that complement each other? Absolutely not. That didn't work either. And then I thought about the time we spent in my Oma's backyard, my Oma Dyck's backyard. In the back of her house, the whole house was lined with stockrosen, which are hollyhocks. And they were covered in bees. So we would catch bees in jars. And sometimes we would catch 2. And I think of those 2 bees as Marlies and I. Sometimes there would be peace and calm and it would be okay, but other times it would be like, and there would be so much chaos that they just had to be freed. Or my Oma would look at us when she walked in and we would be, in German, you say tobing, kind of wrestling around on the couch. And she'd say, schau mal, wie 2 kleine Kätzchen, like 2 little kittens. But I kind of think of it, maybe sometimes it was like 2 little kittens. But other times it might be like when you're sleeping at night and you have your windows open and you hear those 2 cats outside going, and they're circling each other, if you could see them. And sometimes they come together and the fur flies, and for sure. But with time and space, those same two cats can lie down in the same sunbeam together again. I don't know if this works. We were inseparable as kids. While my older brothers went on a fabulous ski vacation with my parents, my sister and I would be at my Oma's building a fort with the table covered in a blanket and all the cushions pulled off, and then my Oma would put on her pelts mantle, her fur coat, and pretend she was a bear until both of us screamed for her to stop. At the cottage, when we first got it, it was just a shell, wide open, and Marlies and I shared a room, and my two older brothers shared a room. So Marlies and I would take socks and gitch, and we would throw them over the walls like this to try to see what we could do to tick our brothers off, to get them mad at us. Of course, we didn't have indoor plumbing, but we had a two-seater outhouse. And for a little kid, that trip at night is terrifying. You know, we'd seen all the movies. We always went together. And no matter what happened in that outhouse, we always waited for each other, too, to make that mad dash back to the cottage before any bears or Sasquatches could get us, because that's what we were sure was going to happen. We spent almost all our time in the water when we were there, diving and snorkeling, and she showed me the trick where she could go underwater and blow bubbles out of the corner of her eye. And I was jealous because I couldn't do that. But our most favorite thing was to get on one of those big inner tubes, and we would sit opposite each other, and we would rock back and forth to see who could get the person the deepest and the highest without wiping out. The two of us were poster children for swimmer's itch and covered in calamine lotion everywhere. And when she got mad at me, which happened quite often throughout the years, I had to remind her how I saved her life once when we were kids. So we were building a Quincy, so we went and we made a great big pile of snow. It was awesome. And of course, you're supposed to wait, and her boys would know that both of us are not that patient. So we got, good enough after maybe half an hour. And we went in there and we started digging and digging, and we were doing quite well. And we were both inside by this point. And she was on her stomach, and I was kind of on my hands and knees, and all I heard was whoomp. And it felt like an elephant was sitting on my back. I fought my way out of there, and I looked at no Marlies. So I frantically started digging with my hands and digging and digging and digging until I saw the pom-pom of her toque. And I grabbed it and pulled it. And at that moment I heard, "You're pulling my hair!" So then I knew she was okay. I knew she was okay. I just wish I could have pulled her out of this one. Marlies says so many things to so many different people, as you've heard. It's kind of hard going at the end here because all the good material might be gone already. And I'm sure a lot of you have been thinking about what she is to each and every one of you. I see a lot of faces here that I don't know, but it attests to sort of the reach she had. For myself, I put partner in crime with a big question mark, because she was my partner for the most part. But once the crime part happened, she would either bolt or she would hold it as leverage against me. I have a few examples. Some of them one that I think is her favorite. One of my buddies, who was a lot smaller than me, showed me that how you could climb the telephone wire on a house like Batman, kind of with your feet against the wall and pull yourself up the wire. So I thought I'd show Marlies my newfound trick that she taught me, or that he taught me. So we were in our driveway. We shared a house with our neighbors, and of course, I was smart. I took the neighbor's telephone wire, not ours. And I was about halfway up, feeling pretty proud of myself when it all came crashing down. And instead of showing concern for me, she goes, "I'm gonna tell." Or at the lake, we were smashing ice, and we're a little competitive, surprise. all trying to do more than the next, and I ended up to here through the ice, and when I came out, I could see her halfway back to the cottage already. But I do say she held it over my head as leverage, but I don't think she ever actually used it. She just threatened, and eventually it went away. As you've heard, she's a creator. Marlies is a knitter, crocheter, hats, scarves, mitts, you name it, she made it. She loved to sew, she loved to cook and bake and garden, even getting involved with home renos at their place, doing mosaics and things like that. Incredible. If you remember K-Tel, some of you will remember K-Tel if you're my vintage, and the things that they used to sell on TV. I'll probably get an eye roll from her for this one, but Marlies would work hard, but she also played hard. So we used to tease her. I used to call her the world's smallest juicer. She loved to have a good time with her friends. But don't fall asleep at a party if Marlies is still awake, because she might take the ends of your socks and cut them off while you were sleeping. She was known for that. She loved to laugh. And Rob reminded me, if you look closely at this picture, when she was really laughing, her nose would get all wrinkled up and her eyes would disappear, and then you knew you really had her. And then the next level, and I think the boys will know this one, if you got her to the next level, it would turn to this really weird, alien kind of rasping, like, and she would hold her stomach and bend over and go, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. So those were the good times. And she and I would always retell old stories. And I apologize for those of you who have heard this story. But one of her favorite stories was, when we were kids, we had the Mennonite version of a pinball machine. So no lights, no sound, no bumpers, no nice pictures on it or anything, but a piece of curved plywood with a little wall and a plunger for shooting a marble and a bunch of nails hammered into it. But we loved it. And my Oma tells us that my two older brothers, as soon as we got this game, of course, they made a long list of rules that we had to follow when we were playing this game. So when the two of them were off on a fabulous vacation with my parents and we were left behind at my grandma's, my Oma's, Marlies took the rules and said, we're not using those. And she just chucked them away. And we started playing. Okay, great, we're having a great time. One of the marbles was a tiny bit bigger than the rest, and you couldn't really tell. So it was Marlies' turn, and it could be the difference between a high score and not high score in our version. So she shoots the marble up with the thing, and it gets stuck. And just as Marlies yells, "Get out of there, fatso," my great-aunt walks in the room. And she goes, "Huh," and walks out, and the two of us just lost it. She loved that story. So because we're talking about laughter, but Rob and I both know, and a lot of you know, that there's a fine line between Marlies laughing at you or with you and getting the eye roll. So you didn't want to get to the point where you got the eye roll. So I'm trying not to get there, though this next little section I might get the eye roll. So my next kind of poem that I wanted to do is a limerick. Now a limerick is different. A limerick is kind of sing-song. They're supposed to be a little funny. They can be a little satirical. So I thought she would expect me to do something like this. I have a couple versions, and I kind of struggled with this because we're in church. I'll try this one first. There once was a girl we called Mar. Little legs, but she traveled afar. Her creations were swish. She could drink like a fish. And at parties, she danced on the bar. We all know that Marlies was an occupational therapist, but she could have been a super spy. She could have worked for CSIS, and you've heard some sort of mentions of it. She would sit in the corner, like the super spies in the movie would always have a newspaper, and they would sit like this, and they would be in the lobby somewhere, and they'd know everything that was going on. Marlies sat behind her knitting. And we'd be in the cottage like this, and she would be telling the kids over here how to cook the supper. She'd be disagreeing with Rob about something crazy that he wanted to do. She would be helping my mom find her coat and telling me how to stack the bowls and where exactly they should go, all at the same time. So that got us a little crazy. So then Mikey and I, we started to sort of make up fake conversations to see if we could catch her. So we would sort of stand off to the corner, and I'd say, Mikey, do we have baking soda? And from across the room, Marlies would go, it's on the third shelf, right behind the yellow jar. And then we would start giggling. Mikey and I would start giggling. She'd look at us and she'd go, you jerks. And then we would be off her radar for a while. And we would wait, and then we would make up a new question and see if we can get her again. It drove us nuts that she did that, but I think now we're going to miss that guiding hand that she gave us. She was extremely proud of her boys, Cam, Dev, Mikey, and Robbie. It didn't matter what they did, she was always talking about their exploits. It could be work, it could be cooking, it could be where they had been, something they had built, even if it was some of their more dangerous things that they were doing. Oh yeah, we're going to fire this potato cannon out over the river here. Like, this is going to be so cool. She would roll her eyes because she didn't approve at the moment, but after the fact, she would brag about it over and over again. Very proud of you guys. So I want to end with two more poems. The next one is an acrostic poem. And in an acrostic poem, your subject gets written vertically, and then those letters become the first line, or the first letter of each line. Marlies, mother of 3 fine young men, always caring for others, rarely at a loss for words. Lover of Rob, independent and fiercely loyal, eager for new challenges, so hard to say goodbye. I started with a haiku poem. I'd like to finish with one. And in this one, I kind of tried to imagine her right now and what she might be doing. Watching from above, the soft click, click of needles, lives linked like stitches. Marlies, we love you and we'll miss you.
Oh, there's a lot of people here. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I stand here, and I'm not even going to look up because I'm going to lose it. So I stand here to pay tribute to Marlies, my love, my partner, my friend. We had been together for 32 years, 27 great years married. We've been blessed with 3 amazing sons. All of them are energetic, adventurous, smart, kind, and caring. All traits they share with their mother. And of course, stubborn. I first met Marlies on a soccer pitch. Surprise, surprise. She was an amazing athlete. She was 5'1" juggernaut. She would typically come flying out of nowhere, beat everyone to a head ball, and with that German square head of hers, nail that sucker all the way across the field. She was always such a firecracker. Marlies is the only one I know that could light up a room with the sound of her laugh. Even when we were in Oktoberfest, you knew she was in the building. And everyone knows what that laugh sounded like. Marlies was an amazing cook, always making fantastic meals, baked goods, especially if bananas were going bad. The boys loved being in the kitchen, watching her, learning from her, cooking with her. She was also an accomplished knitter, as you could see at the front table. I'd come home some days and find a slew of mittens one day, socks the next week, hats, rugs, and it's almost like someone had forgot the knitting machine on. It's hard to share with you the stark reality of losing her. Marlisa's health started changing about 3 weeks ago. Till the end, she was always surrounded by our family and closest friends. St. Pete Palliative Wing was such a wonderful place to have been. A lot of this stuff, I just started throwing kind of groups of ideas together. It was kind of like the beginning. Sometimes life's adversities change one's life's trajectory. I had a significant knee injury. Couldn't play soccer for the longest time. That led me to coaching indirectly Marlisa's soccer team with a very close friend, Jeff Daly. Even though I had put the team, Jeff and I, actually Jeff left after a little while, he was busy. I still had a knee injury. But the girls were so determined, I'd put them through 4-hour practices, endless drills, and earned the name Coach from H.E. Double Toothpicks. Marlies still took a shine to me, not sure what she saw in me, but after listening to Heather, I'm thinking I was probably one of those challenging OT cases. It all made sense at that point when she had said that. I think she looked at me like I look at a house. I could fix that. She was wrong. Unfortunately, the boys kind of follow in my footsteps, and Marlies had to rein us all in. But she loved every darn thing we did. And even if it was crazy and stupid, I always made sure the boys did dangerous things safely. So when I met her, I didn't want to come across as a soccer floozy, so I made her work for it. Waited until soccer season was over, because I wasn't that type of guy. In the fall, we decided to start dating, officially. How can a guy resist such a cutie? She broke the news to me that she was going on a 6-month trip. I thought this was the end. I'm going, just met this girl. She's gone for 6 months. Well, I started getting letters every week at my house with pictures. Marlisa's letters and her adventures intoxicated me. Her free, adventurous spirit and love for life, right up until the end. She made arrangements for me to have dinner with her parents alone when she was gone. You have no idea how stressful that was. And on top of it, she said, "You cannot swear." WTF, man. I am blessed to have been accepted into the Dyck Friesen clan. They're fantastically tight, close, loving group. I found a commonality to my family, the Dorbolos. Our family values, philosophy, loving and caring nature were all in perfect sync. My mom, Eddie, and my dad, Victor, loved her to pieces. Pretty well only girl that my mom ever liked. We always cherished spending time together at the Dyck cottage. For us, it was always about who can come out for the weekends, opposed to when can I get time myself. Thinking to myself, were we just meant to randomly find each other? So many common interests, and all it took was a knee injury. I hated the fact that I could never play soccer properly again, but so thankful that my trajectory took me in this direction. She loved outdoors, she loved adventures, she loved to roll her eyes, and if you ever watch the short, The Big Snit, you have this woman who's sitting there shaking her eyes at the husband, and the husband sawing the table. And that was us to a T. Our boys, Cameron, Devon, and Michael, you're our everything. Living on the Sinboyne River was such an amazing community, was the best place to raise 3 boys. We were looking for pictures of Mom, so I can put it up here. We couldn't find anything of her alone. Anywhere, like literally, we're always together. Kids are together, siblings are together, parents are together. I was always photobombing shit. So recently, we decided to go to the cottage just to kind of regroup. Having the boys out there to gather ourselves, all the troubles just kind of melted away. There are always endless possibilities and adventures there. We did everything, I think. We hung out, we went golfing. I cherish our golf days. I hate golf. I'm not a golfer. I'm terrible at it. But we christened it hippie golf because we could never keep score. Usually drink way too much, but I get 2 to 3 to 4 hours of undivided time with the boys, and I get to watch them and talk to them and be part of their lives, and they're themselves. I don't like people who hide stuff, and to enjoy the time with the boys is so special, especially when they get into their antics. Like Cameron. He bought a new old stand-up jet ski. You guys ever see one of those things? Frickin' impossible to ride. They put this old codger on one, and we had a lot of fun. We also went for a 1-hour free horseback ride, or unguided horseback ride with Cameron and Devon. It was so stimulating. Your senses were awakened, and the inner child / cowboy is like there. And I'm horrendously allergic to horses. I think it lasted about 5 minutes, started sneezing, and I just went, shit. Loved it, though. We had to go to the store and get some Visine immediately after, though. The boys and I actually last night went to a concert, the Lumineers concert. Marlisa had actually bought the tickets a while back, and it got pushed back. And I thought to myself, who knew what a wonderful gift it would have been, or it was, that she left with us, bringing our minds and spirits together at a moment in the company of the 3 most important people in my life, listening to these gifted musicians. It touched my soul. And having Devon play that song that he just wrote for his mom, I have no words. Beautiful, wonderful. Coincidence. This is something that Pam's going to help me with because I'm going to lose my shit. But my sister came up and says, did you notice anything? Do you notice anything, any coincidences? Money laying around? I go, what are you talking about? You're crazy. So she says, well, when someone passes, sometimes things happen, and then you don't really pay attention. And I was at my brother-in-law's massage studio, Alan Hare, kind of arranged massages for all the boys to kind of help the body, mend the soul. So we were sitting there, and I was telling Alan that I liked the song that he's playing. It was a piano, instrumental. And Alan's like, that's kind of weird. I usually have it on shuffle. I didn't think much of it. I just laid back, and I was really enjoying it. And Alan went to his player and realized it was the same song looping over and over and over the whole time. But it was wonderful. It was just so calming, so serene. And the name of the song was Someone to Watch Over Me, instrumentally playing over and over. And I didn't really think much of it. I don't even really know what the song was until I shared that with Sandra, my cousin, and she sent me the words to this song. I guess it's an older song. And it just, if there was a sign, that was a pretty freaking good sign. So I'm going to get Pam just to read just a couple of the verses.
I'd like to add his initial to my monogram. Tell me, where is the shepherd for this lost lamb? There's a somebody I'm longing to see. I hope that he turns out to be someone who'll watch over me. I'm a little lamb who's lost in the wood. I know I could always be good to one who'll watch over me. Although he may not be the man some girls think of as handsome, to my heart he carries the key. Won't you tell him, please, to put on some speed, follow my lead. Oh, how I need someone to watch over me.
Not a chance I could have read that. But what are the chances that something like that would be looping over and over on something that a massage therapist would have on shuffle? Just always. So I took that as a little nod from Marlies. The day after Mar had left us, the boys and I had a wee bonfire, and they invited their friends and a few of our close neighbors. The next day, I was taking stock of the state of the house, and I realized it looked like every floor had barfed. Upstairs, clothes everywhere. Downstairs, bottles and muffins, so many muffins. That's a running joke for most of us. And I was picturing Marlies looking at me and going, I left you the house for 1 day, Rob. 1 day. I could hear it. The eye rolls would have been like deafening. And most of you know, but some don't, but when we were at the cottage, we had a squirrel fiasco at our house. Carol Remmert, Marlisa's lifelong friend and quasi-sister, as well as the Schultzes and Zubraks family, had to deal with the squirrel dilemma while we were at the cottage. Didn't even know. Guess we had a squirrel in the chimney for a couple days. He got out, and he ate all the muffins and crapped in all our beds. I was thinking that Marlies wasn't satisfied with our cleaning, so I really believe that that squirrel may have been her prompting us and compelling us to wash the bed sheets, all the dirty clothes, sanitize the floors, and all the flat surfaces. So I think we got it now. Last of all, my love. We were always opposites. You were on time, organized, always had a schedule or plan. I was a free spirit, unorganized. I loved flying by the seat of my pants, kind of spontaneous. What difference we saw in each other was what we appreciated and wanted to incorporate into our own lives. Combining it all into a fantastic partnership of organization and spontaneity. In other words, for the most part, we complemented one another. I admire your assertiveness, your energy, your strength of will. I was always happy to play Gilligan to your skipper. And I tried so very hard to make you happy, but I'm afraid your bar was way too high for this simple boy. So I made a vow to myself that if I wasn't able to make you happy, I definitely would try not to make you mad. I think I got a solid 60 to 70% consistency on that. I want to thank everyone in attendance, especially Alvin, Lisa, Paul, Lucy, Carl, Brenda, for helping with so many parts of the service. I couldn't have done it. I was too scribbled. It's just been a blur for me and the boys. Very difficult to even talk about it. So I'm so thankful that you guys had taken that on and helped us. Zoe Owen for the video. My mom, Eddie, for helping me at the funeral home and the flowers. Michael, Cam, and Devin for their loving hugs. I'm a hugger. And support in such difficult times in their own lives. I'm so thankful to Devin for writing that wonderful song for his mom. Anne and George, thank you so much for sharing your home, your cottage, and love with me, and give me such an amazing person to share my life with. Thank you all for coming. Love you all. She was an amazing person, and all of you are too.
Thank you, everyone who's shared this morning. You've honored and brought Marlies close with your music and your words. You've reminded us of the great gift that her life was and the huge hole that her death leaves. To close this service, I'll invite you to reflect with me just briefly on two quotes that Marlies left in her journal. The first one is from Anne McBride. One of the happiest moments in life is when you find the courage to let go of what you cannot change. And beside this, Marlies had written in parentheses, positive outlook. And then a second quote from Kim Thiessen. When you see something beautiful in someone, tell them. It may take you a second to say it, but for them, it could last a lifetime. And beside that, Marlies had written grace and mercy. It's a hard, hard thing to be robbed of time, to face the unfairness that the experiences that should still be ahead for Marlies and for all of us to share with her have been taken away. I'm sure we would all be grateful for a magical dose of courage or whatever it would take to set us free from the desire to change this thing that we can't change, that she's gone. And we acknowledge that Marlies may have felt the same way, that she hadn't yet accepted the inevitability of her end, that she wanted to live, and she knew that others wanted her to live. even as you all tried to come to terms with knowing that she wouldn't. Time was running out and then was cut even shorter than expected. And so Marlies may not have had the time to find the peace, the acceptance of her illness and what it would take from her that she may have hoped for, that led her to write that quote in her journal. This isn't a judgment, but an acknowledgement of how much Marlies loved life and desired to live it well, to give to it and to get from it everything that she could, and to create a legacy of joy and love for those she loved. This was a thing she couldn't change, just as she couldn't change her illness. If healing could have been brought by sheer force of will and personality, there's no question it would have come. And she couldn't change the fierceness of her love for Rob, for Michael, Devin, and Cameron, for the rest of you, her friends and family, for the beauty of the lake, or the delight of a great meal, or the comfort of a quiet evening with her knitting or a good book. She couldn't love the beautiful life that she had less to make letting go easier for her. And you, her family and friends, also can't change the fierceness of your love for her brilliant smile and wicked laugh, all the ways she protected you and annoyed you as your mother, for being the best, and of course as the only, also the worst sister you could have ever asked for, a present and caring daughter, a devoted and loyal friend, a generous and compassionate colleague and occupational therapist. These are things that we can't change, even if it feels that less love, a less vibrant life, might bring less pain with its loss. And even with a life so fully lived, we acknowledge that Marlies may have left with unfinished business. She wasn't afraid to speak her mind or show her emotion, and so you knew when you'd stepped over a line, but also that she loved you and was proud of you. But maybe she feared she hadn't said that enough, or regretted times that she spoke out of anger or disappointment. Or maybe you fear that you didn't say enough how much you loved her, the beauty you saw in her, that you didn't take those precious seconds every time that you could have. As time ran out more quickly than anyone thought it would, there wasn't time to say and do all the things, to come to terms, to sort through and tie up all the loose ends. But those questions or regrets or missed opportunities that may have grown in your mind in these last wild weeks don't change, don't shake that bedrock certainty of love that each of you shared with Marlies. This morning has been full of the beauty that Marlies brought to you as your wife, your mom, your daughter, your sister, and your friend, the precious seconds that you'll carry for your lifetime. As they fill you with grief, may they also fill you with gratitude for the force for life and happiness that Marlies was, for her undeniable exuberance that can't and won't be forgotten, for the time you had with her that only made you wish it could be longer. In our time with the family just before this service, I spoke of this service as a rite of passage. We're marking a passage for Marlies, from life to death, lifting her up with words and memories to release her from this life to the mystery that lies beyond this life. And we're marking a passage for you, from life with Marlies to life without her. You're marking this passage by declaring here what Marlies meant to you, by naming what you've lost. You're inviting this wider community into your time of grieving asking for and receiving their support. This room is full of people ready to walk with you on the uneven road of grief. These are the things that will give you the strength to turn toward your life without Marlies, to hold her close while letting her go. Let's pray. Creator, holding the vastness of time and space, we hold up Marlies with deep love and gratitude for the gift of her life. Never has there been anyone like her, and never will there be again. We hold her up with hands that are reluctant to let her go. We hold her up with hearts that have been opened by grief. We hold her up with hearts that are crying to be comforted. We hold her up surrounded by others who are holding her up, many hands making the burden lighter. We hold her up, lifting her to the light with so much gratitude and love. Fill our hearts with that light. Amen. Just a few announcements before the final benediction. Please remain in your seats while the family exits the sanctuary and wait for a signal from the ushers when it's your turn to leave. There is no meal or reception following the service, but family members who are feeling up to it will be in the basement assembly room after the service. If you wish, you may meet them there for a brief word of greeting and encouragement. And to get to that basement assembly room, when you exit the sanctuary, please take the stairs down to your right. And now we'll send you with that same blessing that Carol read earlier, in English and in German. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Der Herr segne dich und behüte dich. Der Herr lasse sein Angesicht leuchten über dir und sei dir gnädig. Der Herr hebe sein Angesicht über dich und gebe dir Frieden. Amen.